Okay, welcome to our Jefferson County Local Development Court, November 3rd, 2022 meeting. Meeting has been called to order. We've done our pledge. There are no guests. Yeah, well, we can ask for privilege of the floor. I guess members can speak too. Minutes, page 3. If you've received copies of them, and if desirable, somebody can make a motion to accept them as presented. So moved. Greg first, John second. Sorry. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Minutes are passed. Treasurer's report, page 6, please.
Pretty uneventful, not much to report there. The income is down due to the grant income dropping off from the previous month. Expenses are down. Also, there was a decline in the marketing, plus the grant expenditures was down from the previous month. The event sponsorship, Marsh, that was the.
Oh, that was the business night out. We did at the airport.
So when you get to everything's reflected in the balance sheet, our net total liabilities and capital is up about $140,000 from the previous month. Not much of a change in the receivables, other than Crescent Yacht Club is paid off in full, Lyle.
Yes.
That's the one major change. Then we get to the question Dave was asked, that's the RLF aged receivables is next, but there's also the COVID receivables. If you have questions about those, Dave?
No, I just said.
Okay. That's where you'll see the COVID loans and where they stand. And that is pretty much all I have to report unless somebody has a question.
Good, motion to accept the treasurer's report. So moved. Bill?
Second.
Christine? Okay, any discussion? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Treasurer's report is accepted as presented. That moves us to, there are no committee reports, council reports. Jay, I think you're first on the docket. Oh, wake you up here.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to give a report here. It's been very busy. We've been, working on the food resiliency grants. A lot of requests for funding coming in for that. We've been able to wrap a few of them up. I have had two that have withdrawn from the project. Crossroad Fruits and Flowers. They had a very small project, $880. And when they saw the paperwork, which really isn't that bad, but there was enough that needed to be done for the $880, they withdrew. And then TI Sauces also withdrew. I don't know why, but they withdrew their project. So we'll just put that money back into the pot to be allocated. Beyond that, the meat processors have been very busy with their projects. Wise Choice has, I believe, expended all their money or very close to it. They've had some great success with theirs. They're very excited about the equipment that they brought in, and it has drastically increased their productivity there at Wise Choice. Cedar Dell, they've purchased a bunch of the equipment that they had in their grant. They're still dealing with some of the issues that they face as far as infrastructure at their facility. They're working through that. Ebersol, he ran into a challenge with his current location, so he is currently working on a new location. He will still be eligible for the grant. The equipment that he was going to purchase through the grant will still be applicable to the new site. And we actually have been very instrumental, helpful in helping him find a new location and, get himself in a place where he'll be able to hopefully begin operation at a new location here in the very near future. So we've been working closely with the 3 meat processors in the county.
And there'll be 3 additional new ones that weren't on the playing field, what, a year and a half, 2 years ago?
5 years ago. Let's give ourselves 5 years.
5 years.
Actually, 2 years ago would be appropriate. So yeah, none of them were operating. So this will be 3 processors that will be operating. All 3 intend to become USDA processors, and that'll be a huge step forward for the county. So, and we continue to watch the horizon for the larger scale meat processing projects. I've been tracking one that has been proposed down in Herkimer County that is a large facility. Also, an old meat processor in Rome it has been purchased by another company and potentially will be expanding their production line, which benefits us as well. So we're watching across the state in what's happening with meat processing. On the dairy processing side, we've been proactive. We've been putting together information that if we ever find a processor that wants to locate here, we'll be able to very rapidly respond and get them the information they would need to consider locating here in Jefferson County. So that's been great. Everybody here on the team has been working on that, and we're just trying to position ourselves as proactively as possible to be prepared for any opportunity that comes along.
Is our new hatchery still on track?
Yes, in fact, they just had the steel for the hatchery delivered 2 months early, which, given the whole circumstances of supply chain shortages and all of that, everybody was excited. The folks from CWT Farms were here in town last week. We met with them. Things are going pretty well with that project, so that was good news.
That's a Lundy construction.
Yeah, Mike is the owner of the property, and they're doing the construction for the project. On the ag workforce side, just like everybody else, workforce is a huge issue. We just had Dr. Richard Stoop. He is the director for the Cornell University Ag Workforce Program. We had a meeting here in the office with him. Had a farmer attend, some extension folks attend. Very good meeting. Trying to build that relationship between our office and that program at Cornell. The one interesting thing with that is I asked Dr. Stoop, what contact he's had with the economic development community outside of Cornell University, and he said none. And so I'm hoping that the meeting we had demonstrates to him that there's a lot that goes on in workforce development that can impact agriculture if they just open those doors across the state. So I'm sure there'd be a lot of benefit for agriculture if that happened. So hopefully we've set that potential standard. Tomorrow I'll be hosting the Jefferson Leadership Institute class. We take them for the whole day and immerse them in agricultural topics. They get to see a whole lot of things, and they will be tired by the end of the day. And tired of hearing me talk by the end of the day.
What's your,
By noon.
what points are you visiting?
They changed the program on us. They're taking the first half hour of the day and doing a leadership training class. So that made me change and sort of center it like Watertown, just slightly south. So we are going to hit Great Lakes Cheese. We're going to swing out to Steve Winkler's place and do livestock, which I've always wanted to do that and never been able to. We're going to go over to North Harbor Dairy because that's where JLI wanted to operate out of for lunches and so on. And so we're going to hit North Harbor Dairy. I was gonna do, and this happened just recently, I was gonna do agbotics, but they just backed out, so I've been trying to figure out how to fill that gap. We're gonna hit Scott Zara with his maple syrup operation. He was one of our grant recipients. And this time, instead of just Mike Hunter and I have like 4 extension people coming, but they've never done it before. So it'll be a educational opportunity for them, as well as I'll draw on their resources for the program. So a little bit of a change in it this year, driven by the program making us change it.
They're doing that actually with each of them. We'll do manufacturing day, but what they got from feedback from previous participants is that they have a little, while they're learning a lot about the county and leadership opportunity, they want a little more leadership training type thing. So each time they meet, they'll be spending the first part of that day on some sort of leadership development type training, and then doing whatever the topic is for that day.
And then last but not least, with the Ag Development Council or Advisory Council on Agriculture, we've lost a couple of the members. The latest is Jim Monroe from Monroe Tractor. He is now down at Dairy One, which is a consulting business to dairy farms. So we're going to start to look at the membership of the council and who's on it. And see if we need to change it up a little bit to address other areas of agriculture in the county that we might not be representing well. There's also some vacancies that we need to fill. So I'll be working on that with the Ag Development Council. So we also have a variety of other projects that aren't in a place where I can really talk about them, but we do have some pretty interesting and good things happening out there in agriculture. So it's been very busy, and if you're bored on a Thursday or Friday night, come on out to a hockey game. Down Wolves. So that's it.
Thanks, Jay. Any questions that he didn't address?
I have a question about meat processing.
Yes.
Okay, Ebersol, right? Did I
Yeah.
say the name right? Has he found a new location?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You mentioned that they're all going to try to get USDA. Are they going to do that collectively as a group? They're all going to do it individually.
Correct.
Is that make more sense in trying to have a consolidated USDA effort? I know that mostly has to do with the front end of the project.
I don't know that they could do it collectively in those separate locations. Now, will they each benefit each other? Yes, because if it was just one meat processor, small meat processor here in the county going USDA, they may have more difficulties getting a USDA vet.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
I just wonder, when I look at the local food resiliency, should we be allocating some of that, or if we could, to helping them set up a way where they could share the vet? Because that's the big nut to crack, isn't it? Having a USDA vet at the time they begin the process.
Yeah, they have an inspector that would come in, but then they have a vet that they also have to deal with. I have to be honest and say, I don't know that those details that well, but what I will do, because I think you brought up a good point, is I will bring the 3 parties together and have a conversation about that.
Right.
And it might be beneficial for them, even though they will be competitors, it might be beneficial for them to all sit at the same table. We do that with.
Are they all going to
From
be?
the eyes of USDA, they generally look at those facilities standalone.
Yes, yes.
They can meet and hear the stories the USDA expectations are, but they're gonna be viewed as individual locations on the eyes of USDA.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking with a vet, each one's not going to be able to retain a USDA vet. That maybe they set up schedules for where they share a vet, and the processing is, I hate to say slaughter, that the front end of the project.
Yeah.
They
will-
just have their schedule. I don't believe they're all going to be starting processing the same every day of the week. So could they share that?
They will share that whether they want to or not. USDA will designate a vet that will cover those operations, and more than likely it will be the same person. It will also benefit Midway International Logistics because it will give them, because they have to have access to the inspector and the vet as well. And because they're the only operation in town, they have difficulties accessing those people. So this will also benefit that business. But I like what you're talking about, Paul, and it makes sense to me to try. I can't say that they'll all want to, but to try and bring them together at the same table for at least a conversation.
I've sat here long enough hearing the stories that we need to get to a USDA facility in the county. So if we have some that are trying, I think we should make that a priority.
Yeah. We have,
Make it a priority to help them get
Yeah.
there.
yeah, no, and we're continuing to do that. There's some other things that we're doing to try and help, each of them, get to that point.
One other question. I went into Price Chopper, and I'm normally comatose when I walk through the door, thinking about where the donuts are in the store. But they have a sign that
Right
says,
to the left in the glass case.
yeah. It's like my car knows the way home. I know the way there. There's a sign on the door that says no raw chicken products can go to Canada. What's that about?
It's the disease.
The influenza,
Yeah.
influenza.
Whatever the disease is that is impacting, Canada has limited the
It
amount.
stops at the border? It's smart disease?
Smart disease. They're not able, the Canadians aren't able to bring it
Bring it
over
back.
either. They toss it away at
So it
the
stops at the border.
Yeah,
It's a smart disease.
yeah, it's a smart disease.
Doesn't impact
Yeah.
the natives of the country that are eating the harvested.
This is correct.
Another
Chick-fil-A.
another stupid political
Yeah.
decision. We'll
Yeah,
just leave it.
but I
Or
did
the
check, is when
migratory
when that happened, I was concerned about CWT Farms. And they've indicated it's actually making their opportunities once they get running better because of domestic.
Okay.
So, yeah, and we've actually, I've actually been working with CWT. There's a customer here in New York that reached out to me because they didn't know how to get in touch with CWT, and they want to talk to CWT about accessing a supply of chicks to bring it here to New York versus where that company was getting it from elsewhere. So,
Thank you. That's all I had.
Thanks, Dave.
Paul, to your point, I'll just throw out the fact that in this stage with all those three processors doing their build outs, I think it's good that they all pursue USDA inspection and their build outs so that their plant is set up for it, where they're using monies and whatnot. When it comes to scheduling the inspector, then they can start to work cooperatively. But most of those plants, I think, Jay, you'll agree, they'll be running non-inspected products through there maybe 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And then 1 day a week, they need to do USDA certification for retail opportunities, in which case then the inspector has to float between the three or whatever.
Correct. Yeah.
So I encourage all three of them.
Yeah.
Well, Dave and then Marshall, you guys can just go in whatever order you wish, manufacturing, marketing.
Sure. Anything about manufacturing day? I mean, you've seen coverage. We shared you some of the coverage of manufacturing day, but Marshall can share with you some of the figures from that. So.
Yeah, over 1,000 kids participated. We're down a couple manufacturers across the 3 counties. This was a wildly successful program. I would say we didn't have any issues. We did have to schedule a couple of schools for a different day. Again, due to the manufacturers, we had some that we've worked with a lot in the past that have capital projects, more than 3 that have capital projects going on where they couldn't host students. But some of the highlights, again, Great Lakes Cheese did a great tour. Air Brake is always super interesting for the kids. A couple things you want to highlight, since I was at Air Brake this year, the kids need to understand that the average manufacturing wage is over $67,000 a year. And this is a real opportunity for the kids. And also when you're at Air Brake or you're at Great Lakes Cheese and you're visiting these manufacturers to look around and see the employees and, people are happy doing what they're doing. It's not manufacturing as they may have in the back of their minds. Although I do think that that's kind of changing, as the kids are, getting older. It's not, maybe people more of my generation might, have a view of manufacturing as being sort of a dirty operation. And I do think that has since changed because the kids today, they see manufacturing facilities and, Air Brake is gleaming right now. All freshly painted. There isn't as much stuff going on inside the plant, but there's still a lot of stuff going on. And they're doing a lot of preparations for potential changes to their manufacturing business for the positive. So it was a great day. It really was.
And we usually do hear good feedback from the teachers and the students. In fact, if you saw the article on Metalcraft tours there, one of the workers there had actually gone through the manufacturing day tour there about 3 or 4 years ago as a student and learned about that opportunity to kind of pursue that welding. Also manufacturing, back in the spring, we did a roundtable in cooperation with Lewis County, kind of involved manufacturers and educators, talking with folks on workforce training. We're actually scheduling for mid-December now. Again, a second roundtable with Jefferson Lewis County, just going to focus more on the manufacturers and the agencies like us that are there in the system, like us, SciTech, Workforce Development Institute, and others. So again, another roundtable we should kind of identify some key issues that we need to be working on.
Marketing, anything?
Well, a couple of things. And I don't know if you want to discuss the grants, but I'd give you a little bit of an overview on where we're at because we've exhausted the funds on the deferred maintenance for the rental properties. We've exhausted the funds for productivity. We have a little bit of funds left over that we're still working through for, and this will be after we approve these. Basically for maybe 1 or 2 possible more grants for the incumbent worker. So this has gone very well. Again, and I thank her every board meeting. Joy's doing an incredible job keeping us organized. On a different note, we are going to be putting out a newsletter that Robin is overseeing here in the next couple of weeks, and that's going to be one of the things that she's been working on. So a lot of things to look forward to in marketing.
Very good. I guess we can skip to the document you were talking about. This was handed out by
This is our overall.
hopefully everyone.
Yep. So essentially there, as Marshall said, this just shows actual funds expended through the end of October, not actually, so it shows a balance there of what's not been expended, but actually, as Marshall said, as far as being allocated, most of the funds in some of the categories are pretty much allocated at this point in time. First funds, because they just work them to get purchases in place or do the training, get to do the reimbursement. So the program's going very well, and we have another proposal for the county for another round next year.
Well, that leads us to the privilege to discuss dispersing funds, page 24 through 27 for the first packet. Small business, I should ask any questions about the document or the program? No. Page 24 through 28, we have a number of projects that total to $22,847.20 for small business productivity. There are 4 projects. Some big, some small. They're well explained on the document. So I think simply ask for a motion to approve these. We'll take a second, then we can have a discussion, and then we can kind of go through that process. So if we can ask for a motion to approve these projects and the disbursement of the funds.
I'll make a motion.
I heard Ken and Kristen, so you guys can write down any order you want. Okay, so we have a first and a second, so let's have a discussion now. So we've got a couple projects, I'm sure you'll pepper Marshall with very difficult questions.
I just have a couple questions. Hall Pass Tavern, I know where most are. Where is that?
That's in Carthage. On
Okay.
our side.
And
It's a point of sale project,
Yeah.
and which is really typical of the types of projects that we've been doing in the past. We've done a lot of these point of sale projects for restaurants.
And MS Corp, DBAXL Spa and Salon.
Yep.
I know where none of these are in the county, the salons, so.
This is
Not getting your hair colored, Paul?
No.
Come on, I think you should know.
Or,
well, here's the place to go.
Yeah.
It's a equipment.
I was just wondering, where is it, in the city, in Carthage?
It's in the city of Watertown.
Okay.
The Hall Pass Tavern is in Carthage. Yes. I don't know if I made that clear.
So in the past, we don't go through each one individually, but in total, what we're going to be approving is $22,847.20 under small business productivity improvement funds that the county has generously provided to disperse to applicants. We've already discussed the application process, vetting process, and everything else. So if there are no other discussions, I will take a vote. I just want to make sure everybody's good with this. So if there are no other discussions, we do a simple all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, these are approved. Page 28 of our packet, we have one project, incumbent worker training, in a total of $12,000. Again, it's well explained. We'll follow the same process. If we can have a first and a second, and then we can have discussion. We have a motion to accept the project for discussion.
So moved.
Dave Council. John Jennings, first, second. Okay, discussion. Not much, simple one.
I do know where the Y is.
Which one? There's multiple. There are multiple. This is the main.
There's one less in Sackett's.
Yeah. Okay, so, go
How
ahead.
many people would that involve, is my question.
10 employees.
Okay, that's good. $12,000 grant incumbent worker training. We've already had a discussion. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? This grant is approved. Okay, that leads us to, I'm assuming Justin has nothing in this program to update us on. Good. Any new business that we haven't covered? Okay. Does anyone want to adjourn this meeting? Kent first. I heard a second. Dave, I think. Somebody. Greg? Okay. Everybody wants to be the second. Okay, meeting is adjourned. That moves us to
See you, Ken.
take care. Our Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency meeting for November 3rd, 2022. We've already have done our pledge. Privilege of the floor. We do have at least one guest. So any discussion? No? Okay. Minutes, page 3. You've received them, and if you agree with them, I'd ask a motion to accept them as presented.
So moved.
Dave Converse, the first.
Second.
Bill Johnson, second. Any discussion on modification of the minutes? Okay, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are moved. Treasurer's report, page 6.
Okay, I'll start by saying, Lyle, if I explain this wrong, please correct me. In the revenues, you'll notice there's a first-time entry on gain on property acquisition. That is booking the value of the land we got from the city to aid on Arsenal Street for the Y development. Remember, we had to acquire a chunk of land. I keep forgetting that we have to own the building through the federal grant. That's why it's being booked on ours. Is that accurate, Lyle?
That's accurate. If
Okay.
you look on the balance sheet, you'll see the asset.
Yeah, all these things I'm going to point out are also reflected in the balance sheet. You'll notice that the revenues are down dramatically from the previous month, as are expenses, and that has to do with grant income and the money flowing through us to the Y project. So those are kind of offsets because they're pass-throughs. And then I had a question that I thought of after Lyle was gone for the night. If you go to the balance sheet, we show 146 Arsenal Street building improvements under other assets at 3.264 million, right, Lyle?
That's correct.
Will that number be changing? Because obviously we own that building, and when it's done, it's a $20 million project. Is that something we're gonna have to book at a different value at some point in time when that
I'm
project?
going to have to look into that. I don't know the answer right now, but there are regulations on how it has to be handled.
Okay,
And I'll work through Bowers with that.
okay. That's just a question I had that I couldn't get the answer for, because if we have to book getting a chunk of land, I would think we'd have to book the new improved value of the Y once that's completed. Other than that, the balance sheet reflects those things we talked about in the income and expense section of the budget, of the treasurer's report. The revolving loan funds, everybody's current, no changes there. The micro loan fund, same issues as before with some delinquencies. Oh, and I also have to point out on the expense side, going back to the first page, you'll notice we've increased the allowance for bad debt, and that shows up on the expense side. So that is all I have for this. And I'd make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, Lisa. Question on the bad debt. Did we actually increase the allowance? It looks like you've actually written it off.
No, that's increasing the
Okay,
allowance.
so you just, you're recording it as an expense this month
Yeah,
by
you have to.
increasing. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because we had talked one time, you were gonna wait till the end of the year.
Well, I usually do it in December, but it was approved, so I got it.
And that, without naming the projects, that's the 2 demand letters and the one that is, what, 2 months or you
3
just-
months, I think.
We've had a request from that one that's 3 months behind to modify the loan.
Okay, because that one, if you added that in, that would be way in excess of the 59. The 2 demand letters and the 2 months add up to
That's
about.
raising the total to 90, Rob.
Oh, I
Look
see.
on
So
the
it's
balance
50,
sheet.
okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So it's 59 plus the
59
30.
brought it up to 90.
Okay.
Any response to your demand letters?
The attorney just sent them out
Okay.
on one, and on the other one, on barber shop, no response.
So we have first, second, had some discussion. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of the treasurer's report as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Report carries. That moves us to, there was or wasn't an alternative energy meeting?
Well, briefly, we had a meeting the other day between staff, Justin, Bill, and I about discussions on setting up a meeting with real property taxes in the county to come up with a way, how they're going to enter these solar projects on the assessment roll. The meeting hasn't occurred yet or been scheduled. But there's some concerns that Justin has about how entries on the assessment rolls are moving forward and how Lyle has to process the pilot payments. So that's an ongoing discussion. There'll probably be a report later on that in the future.
These projects on Borlex has been approved. I assume they're gonna want to start constructing in the spring. At the hearing, EDF said they wanted to be operational on the other one in 23, which is this coming year. So if they're gonna be operational, both those projects have got to be into construction first part of the year.
And in the discussion I had with Dave, no one has made inquiries to hear about starting the process if they wish to negotiate a pilot agreement. I wouldn't be surprised if they're waiting on the final determination from the state on how they're going to value it. Are the new increased interest rates driving their projects? I don't know. Is it affecting their loan commitments? I have no idea. So, but we have not been contacted to begin a process with us.
Do you think the state, say in the next 3 months, if they submit an application, are the state's values gonna be to the point where you can sit down and calculate?
I talked to the director of real property tax service in the state. All they're saying is that it's still under the temporary restraining order, and that's what shows on their website. They weren't given any updates. The head of the oversight agency of the state and their lead counsel are retiring this year, so who knows if that's not having an impact on it.
Any questions for Paul, Alternative Energy? 146 Arsenal Street, I'm assuming you, Dave.
Things are moving along on schedule. We're meeting weekly with the Y and the contractors, Purcell and PCA. And a couple things got behind schedule a little bit, but a few things are ahead of schedule. Overall, they're satisfied with the progress and the way things are going.
Are they tearing up Arsenal Street now? If you go across from the county building, National Grid was tearing up the center of Arsenal Street.
Oh,
Is
they're
that
putting
part of the Y project to get utilities there they need?
It's part of it, yeah. I mean, part is why. Part of the grid wanted to relocate the transformer. They've done that work, but they're also putting a new gas line to the generator as well. And then it looks like I'm not sure if they're doing it yet, but I know that now Washington Properties, the bottom part of the building that Washington Street Properties owns has now been sold to Jake Johnson. But they're interested in possibly putting gas for their lower part. So right now they're running a gas line for the new generator outside the building.
I swear all of downtown's torn up now. Coffee Street, Arsenal Street, the intersection.
Bless the plow. It's by design. You don't have to plow the roads if they're torn up. Save on maintenance costs.
I was talking to my son, he bought a snowmobile this year. I says, well, I can put my snowblower away because if you bought a snowmobile, it means we're not gonna get snow.
Any questions on 146 Arsenal? Okay. We received a resolution, I think, yesterday or the day before. So to do justice, I'd rather have Justin kind of explain the high level of what this is all about in case some of us haven't read it. And then I'll read the resolution after that and we can have a discussion with context. So Justin, please provide context.
And Justin, just keep in mind too that the board, by the time I came onto the agency, had a bad experience with property up at the CFM property up in the corporate park, where the company went bankrupt and we ended up having names against the property. So.
Yeah, I think I was talking with Don Alexander back at the time, and was aware of some of the issues with that project. And in this case, we have a bound land development agreement, or LDA, with the applicant to sell that particular 88 acre parcel of property for the project. They're looking to undertake some pre-closing development activities, basically clearing, grubbing, scraping, and putting in some gravel. So there is risk that comes along with that. It's IDA property. There's concerns that you would have with regard to general risk, having contractors on your land engaged by a third party. Permitting activities, is this permitted? Is this pre-site plan? What is it? And also to the extent that they're paying for those contractor activities to occur, you wouldn't want any things to attach or any other financial issues associated with them improving your land pre-closing. So we set up an amendment to the LDA that expands their license rights to undertake this scope of work with a list of contingencies that are in the amendment attached to your resolution. Those contingencies are intended to protect the agency as the landowner. If any issues like those I addressed, agencies are intended to address those. the contractor's gonna have to show insurance. Harry will have to present all of the contracts to the IDA for review. There's indemnities, protecting the IDA for any costs or liens. If any mechanics liens are filed, we can terminate the LDA and back out if we choose to do so. And then just those general concerns that I think presented themselves with the CFM project. So the amendment is about as protective as it could be. Dave had to talk me into it. He can go into context on that if you want, but I think there's probably some value here to get this scope of work nailed down before the hard snow and frost sets in this winter to prepare the project to commence in earnest. I would think, March, April, May, when the financing is secured to move forward with a full closing pilot and their financing.
Justin, do the improvements remain with the land? Like if something were to go awry, we're not like obligated to say, oh, he spent 80 grand, we owe him 80 grand because he improved the land, or do they just remain with the land because he's doing it at his risk?
That's a good point. It's understood that, he's improving our land for his convenience.
Okay. That's the way I would interpret it, but I'm sure he interprets it differently.
Yeah, I think that's a good comment, and a release statement can be included within the amendment to indicate that despite his preliminary investment, and I don't know what the scope of this work may cost, we'll see the contract. But a simple statement that we're released, and if the contract isn't executed, in other words, he never closes, I guess we have a nice square of gravel out there for the
Well, I
next guy.
suppose he could conveniently put back the stumps and take the gravel. We should allow him to do that, but I think that would be foolish.
That costs him more money.
Well, that's what I mean. He can make a choice.
Justin, what in here covers us in the case that the insolvency of the company and there's liens put against our property? We've had that in the past. All of a sudden you got $1 million worth of contractor bills sitting there and the company goes away and they lien our property.
That's always a risk. I've included language that the contract he binds for the improvements needs to be fully bonded. In other words, someone will step in and finish the work and it'll be paid for. And there's lien release language and indemnities. We've also got $1 million in the wind as well, so we need to keep an eye on that. So we've loaned money into the project for development purposes, so we've got skin in the game already here, pretty substantially.
So there is a performance bond.
Included language in the contingencies for the contract to be bonded. I'll go back and double check that and make sure that it's as full of proof as we can.
Even this portion?
The exhibit A attachment.
Okay, yeah. One step back from where Dave was, if they're not insolvent, but due to lack of payment or whatever, and a contractor places a lien on the property, similar protections through lack of payment, because we're the owners, so we're stuck in this in the middle of it regardless. We can't get out of it.
Yeah, the LDA as it's drafted right now has license rights that are limited to going out and testing, drilling, poking, and doing feasibility things.
Okay.
With protective language in the LDAs that basically states if a mechanic's lien or any kind of liens placed on the property in connection with their activities, they either need to satisfy it within 30 days on demand or bond over. And if they don't, there's no more contract. We're sorry.
Okay.
So if he wants to proceed with the project, he'd be inclined to either satisfy or bond over to our satisfaction. So assuming this thing is moving along with enough head of steam, I would hope that a nuisance filing would be disposed of as quickly as he could get that done.
I would suspect so.
So has Convol Hari, has he agreed to all the contingencies? Everybody's on the same page?
Yeah.
Well, my God, especially if we're gonna add that additional concern
Yeah.
to the contingencies. It's
Yeah,
like
so,
that.
so Justin, this, we're gonna say that we will add, so this would be added to the separate thing, or would we add it to the exhibit A, the statement about, any improvements stay with us?
That would, I'll add today.
Okay,
Well, I would think with that, my goodness, it's like we're fully protected.
I mean, the advantage of what is, I mean, if they're ready to at least start that much work, the way to look at it, that puts them a couple months ahead, in terms of getting things started construction. So the sooner they get the construction done, the sooner they get people to work, the sooner we see the product start making, so.
No, this is all good stuff to move the project along, as long as the risk can be as close to zero as possible. They're never zero,
Right.
no matter how much you think they are.
Just a
They're never
couple,
zero.
just a couple of quick questions. Last month you reported on the appraisal of his assets to protect us. Will those roll over if there was a claim against us that we could, that our, you said the appraisal of the
Yeah,
equipment
right, yeah,
more than covered
Right.
what our
yeah, our loan.
skin in the game
Right,
is.
But I think we're getting a
that
project
was
bond.
tied to the loan, that's not tied to this.
Okay.
In this case.
That's
we're
fine.
Protected by the bond.
Yeah, this part is like, we have land, we haven't transferred
Yeah.
ownership yet, so there's, I guess, two main things, workers' liens or other liens and improvements, those are the things we need to make sure we are sheltered from.
Now, my last question is we had to go rush to cut down the trees because of what time of year is he have those type of issues now where he has to get this done right now because more bad issues or
These are
something?
stumps, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not
No,
bad.
this is not a bad issue, so he's just basically clearing stumps,
Okay.
leveling, great.
I think it's a good thing to get them started as long as we're protected.
And if you needed to cut trees, we were in that period of time when you cut them.
Okay.
So this is between November 1 and March 30th.
Again, before I read the resolution, good time. Any more questions for Justin or any more questions about this? And then we can kind of have another semi-discussion after we read the resolution, get a first, second. Anything? Thank everybody for adding some more context and discussion here. Justin, anything else you need or want to add?
No, I don't think so. I do want to add that I also included a mandatory lien release from their contractor upon completion of this phase of people in the construction industry that as components of work are completed, it's usually in a drawdown situation with a construction loan, but we would have them issue a direct lien release to the IDA when that phase of work. And in essence, they're going to go out and grind and scrape and probably pack gravel in with the they're going to button that up for winter and kind of wait for the next phase to occur. I've set it up that within 30 days, we're supposed to have that lien release in our hands to eliminate any of the financial concerns that we've.
One last question, since this is somewhat outside of the loan, but I don't know if it falls within the loan eventually. Is he also required to follow all the prevailing wage and all the other requirements when he's using public money? Because he's kind of using his own money technically, isn't he? And what's the IDA stance if we have to approve contracts that are not prevailing wage? Like, does this eventually fold into the loan where we're obligated to follow those rules?
Well, right now he's improving IDA property, so that's a good point. And
But with his money. So I don't know, like, which side of that does it fall?
Well, he's using private money to improve public land.
Okay.
Loans.
I don't know, consider it, because if we have to approve the contracts and we have a certain set of guidelines that we need to follow, I just don't know what they are, because it's his money, but it is our land. And does this eventually get paid back once he gets all of our loans? Theoretically, I would assume yes.
What do you mean get paid back?
We're loaning money to this project in numerous ways.
Well, no, yeah, well, he's making payment on that first loan.
I get that,
He's
but
spent
like,
that.
how do we know that money isn't to pay for some of these improvements? So if he's using public money, he has to follow the rules.
Well,
If he's improving public land, I don't think we heard the answer yet. If he uses his own money to improve public land, I don't know that he has to follow the rules.
yeah, I know, I
We
mean,
need a decision on that one.
yeah, well, as far as that nuance, I mean, for what he's reported, he's already spent the money that we loaned him. So that's been spent.
Whatever. I mean, public perception is
Yeah,
he's
right,
using
right.
public money for
Yeah.
public land
Right.
to make improvements, but I guess you may not be able to answer that this moment, but
And the prevailing wage implications generally aren't tied to money per se, it's just in fact IDA land.
okay.
So I'll double check with our legal folks. And typically, this can even attach to, you know, if you have a developer building a residential subdivision and they're building a roadway.
Mhm.
They're built town specs, and it stated that the town will have that roadway dedicated to it. That private residential developer's got to use prevailing wage on the road. There's prevailing wage attachments where you have public land and any involvement by the public agency for design specs and layout.
Mhm.
So there may be enough there, and what you've also jogged my memory on is, or at least a note to make, is Lyle and Dave, as we head into the project approval process, which is kind of the next step after this. We've completed the public hearings, we have the pilot format established with consent from the taxing jurisdiction. Deeker was done, they're opening up site plan a little bit to tinker. Like, once that's done, this board, you folks will consider a project authorizing resolution, which contains all the pilot benefits, sales tax, mortgage tax. I don't know, and we need to kind of go back and see if this project has more than 30% of public funds associated with it. He may be fully all in on prevailing wage anyway for the entire project, and I don't know where he sits on the vote. So we have a bit of a project to do, and it could have an implication on his overall project budget depending on the impacts on labor costs. So there is a significant amount of state funding associated with the project, which.
Yeah, and the state incentives there are going to be not capital grants, but it's through the Excelsior Jobs Program, so it's a reimbursement based on job creation. So I'm not sure how that plays into that whole percentage of project.
Yeah, tax credits generally need to be grossed up along with the entire pilot.
Okay.
All 20, or whatever term we're using here. Plus sales tax, plus mortgage tax. You know, there's a pretty big top end number on this total project cost, and that can include all CapEx and machinery to help the denominator or whatever. But I think we need to take a look at that and make sure that
We'll make mention of it when we read the resolution, that you'll perfect that language if it does need to be included. Okay. Any
What-
other questions for Justin?
What is is there new, if it's different than the original cost of this project? Has it gotten, is it?
They're still looking at about 64 million. So they're still right in that ballpark. I mean, nothing, they haven't told us about that changing at this point in time. That's still the target for
Okay. Forgive me, I think this is page 15 of our new packet. Yeah, 15. Okay. Because I've got the one Dave sent, so it says page 1, clearly not. Page 15. Authorizing resolution, Convault Energy Inc. and Convault Manufacturing LLC Phase 1. Resolution 11.03.2022.01, resolution of the Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency authorizing the execution and delivery of an amendment to the land development agreement as further described herein with the Convault Energy Inc., the company. Second whereas clause gives the location and property size. Third whereas clause gives some other particulars of, it's semi-subdivided, Convault Manufacturing. Fourth whereas clause is our original LDA was February 18th, 2021. And as we just thoroughly discussed with council, we now understand the context of this is allowing some pre-work before what we'll say closing. Exhibit A of this resolution is the amendments to the LDA, it goes through and sets certain criteria and provides certain rights and protections for the agency and certain certain requirements of the company. We discussed that council will consider and add additional language that will specify any improvements will remain with the land or something to that effect. And then also he'll consider and suggest language if the prevailing wage clause has to be inserted into this document. With that, I think that's the full context and the reading of the resolution. So we can now officially ask for a motion. Paul,
Yes.
second. John Jennings. Okay. Any other discussion? Since we've discussed this for some time already. It is a roll call vote, please, Peggy.
Rob,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Just a side note, prevailing wage probably isn't gonna really matter.
Probably not.
Driving through Ogdensburg the other day, drive by McDonald's, they got a sign out there, help wanted, starting pay $21 an hour.
Get out of here.
Wow.
Yeah, but you see, when they go through and they establish those wages, they're gonna look what that is now and they're just gonna push it. What's the saying? Rising tide rises all ships.
You got it.
So,
I did talk to the owner of Chick-fil-A last week when they had their ribbon cutting and asked him about the hiring process. He said they interviewed 1,000 people and that they hired 120. And I said, how did you end up being able to hire them? He says, well, he goes, we had a lot of people we were able to interview, but he said they're starting at 15, Sundays off. He says they have a lot of meal benefits, 50% off when, anytime you want to come in when you're not working, free meals while you're working, and 4% match for their 401k, which I thought was not bad. A lot of places are 3%. So he said, we give them a lot more benefits, but he says, we expect turnover too. But I couldn't believe, and he said that because I asked him if the workplace helped, and he said they did because they were expecting a trailer to come in to do all the interviews, and it got delayed. So they went to the workplace and I think Hilton Garden Inn, and yeah, they went through 1,000 people to get to their 100.
So was their intent to pay benefits then, have full-time employees?
They have,
versus
yes.
part-time?
Yep, and the people that work outside doing the orders, they even have different uniforms. They even have heavy parkas. He said, and they added a warming room so that during the winter, when they're out there taking orders, they can come in and warm up. He said they really thought everything out. So I was, because I thought, how are you going to get people? So I was surprised, even
That
at
doesn't seem
15 an
real tough,
hour.
Looking at the lines.
I'm just surprised
They
they were able to hire that many
No way.
people. I don't
I
know.
think the telltale sign would be a year.
It's like
from
we
now,
got
the amount of insurance.
Yeah.
How much they got.
Right.
Any other new business? That was kind of new.
It was new business,
It was.
yes.
Any other?
There
Oh,
was.
just-
No, I'm
just-
saying, any other?
Just to report, update on the turn lane in Corporate Park. The holdup there has been waiting for National Grid to report some time ago, moved the utility pole. We've been waiting for them to finalize their design for relocating the gas main. And once they finally got that done, DOT to review and approve that. That's all done now. At this point in time, it's probably like a year that we probably want to start working on the turn lane until spring. They also need to coordinate the town of Watertown relocating their infrastructure out there, so.
All right.
So
When you go in the 202 entrance and you're staring at the fire station, the
Yeah.
pole barn got built, that's private land, that's not part of the corporate park, or is that?
No, that's
private.
yeah.
I assumed it was
Yeah.
private, if
Yeah.
something just popped up there, but, yeah, cool. Anything else, Justin, council?
Dave, did you want to bring up?
Oh, geez, yeah, sorry.
Well, hold on, Dave forgot something.
Not for, just, we'll be sending out notices, so we're getting near the end of the year, so we're gonna need to do governance committee. We will have a couple minor changes, a couple policies, personnel committee and nominating committee meetings. So-
Yep.
so-
Very good.
And with the holidays coming up, I don't know schedules, but we'll try to figure something out.
Every day except the 25th.
So if it works out best for you, what we do is we'll use doodle polls to kind of determine
It's stuff
the
work every day.
What about-
Probably a weekend.
What about maybe while we're all right here, if we can run all three of those committees through on one day? You wanna try and pick a day?
Is there some commonality?
You
I
could,
think there's two of them.
but you're gonna wanna review some stuff so then we can get part of the board pack for the board meeting afterwards.
And you want those done before our board meeting in
Before
December?
board meeting.
So they have to happen in November.
So I'm thinking the week of the 14th. So if anybody wants to check their calendars, because then the next week is the holiday, unless we do it earlier
I
in the
don't know
week.
if, I think I'm on one of those committees, but I couldn't even, I should know, but I don't know.
That fits me.
I know I'm not a non
Governance,
I don't get a report governance. Maybe.
which is, it's actually next week, right?
What's the other 2
weeks.
2 weeks.
Week
yeah.
after.
Personnel governance and,
16th is no good for me in the morning,
I know I'm not with
if I'm on any of those committees.
You are.
I get it done.
Governance.
Probably. Not now.
Yeah, 16th isn't good for me neither.
Okay, so no on the 16th.
I can do afternoon, I just can't do morning.
Okay.
But we normally do them early in the morning, so.
I mean, that day or that week.
The 16th is right now.
Well, the 16th seems to be out anyway, so.
Yeah,
How about, we wanna do governance on the 15th? That
I'm open.
it's good for me.
What is it?
All right, let's try for that 15th, at 1.
We'll send out an old man reminder.
Is that it for the rest of new business? Justin, we interrupted you and anything else? You're muted, actually, so I'm assuming you're saying no.
No, nothing for me, thank
Okay, your head was shaking, but, as for an adjournment, first,
Yes.
Paul
Second,
first, Lisa second, the meeting stands adjourned. And then there is no other alphabet meeting. Well, Jay took up 15% of the meeting time, otherwise